Actually, for a very long time, we have been trying to collect the oral her story of Sahabat Wanita, and we thought that this year, when Lucia comes, she's one of the co-founders of Persatuan Sahabat Wanita. We thought we would use that occasion to try and bring together people who are involved in Sahabat Wanita, and that's how the whole idea for this came. We just were thinking of an ordinary event, everyone sitting together and speaking, and then Suguna, our current secretary, said, no, you must videotape it, this is your history. And that's how the videotape and all that came. So it's a bit disorganized on these things, but let's try and get as much as our memories about Sahabat Wanita together as we can tonight.
Thank you, Irene and Arumugam, for being here. I was born in the 1970s. I think just a few years before Sahabat Wanita Selangor was born. And I wonder where did this, how did the idea of forming Sahabat Wanita Selangor come from?
The idea for Persatuan Sahabat Wanita actually came first from our experiences as students with a cooperative group. That group didn't really have a name, so we just call it cooperative cells. So one of the cells was in Puchong, 14th mile and 17th mile, and we actually, while teaching the workers in that area about cooperatives, we said, why don't we include the women? And that's how the idea for involving women in an organization like this came about. And that was our first experience with women workers. And the experience was that it is not easy to organize women workers because they have no experience of belonging in any organization. We started working with the women in the plantations and in the tin mines. Then we came up with the idea of a separate organization for women workers. While we were organizing other workers in general, we said it was important to have a separate organization for women workers. That's how the idea for Sahabat Wanita began. And then the reason why we moved or included also the free trade zone was the pioneer status for the free trade zone that was near us, which is the Sungai Way Free Trade Zone, was finished. It's already 10 years, more than 10 years. So in our mind, it meant that we can now organize the women workers into a trade union. That was our intention. But we also know that the trade union movement in Malaysia is very male dominated. And if we organize a trade union, all the leaders will just be men. There will not be many women. So we said that we want to train the women, and then when the union starts, the women can be part of that leadership. So that was the idea of why we went to the free trade zones. So going into the free trade zones, how did we get into the free trade zones? One of our team, later we will speak to him, he lived in that area, the free trade zone area, and he actually took me to meet all the people that he knew, all the women that he knew who lived in near the Sungai Way Free Trade Zone. So we went every Sunday. I would go with him to meet the women and talk to them, and then from there they would introduce me to other women. So it was a lot of leg work, regular leg work, and I also had to find out about the conditions of the women workers. Their living conditions I could see for myself, but what they did in the factories, I didn't know. So I actually spoke to hundreds and hundreds of women workers, and then I began to understand what was their work like, looked at the different departments. There was once actually when they smuggled me into the factory in the night shift because the guard was their friend. So I actually went into the factory and had a look at all the areas because foremen, all these people were not there. So I actually went into the factory and had a look. So all this was a learning process for me. But that's how we began the organizing of women workers in the free trade zones. Well, Operasi Lalang, as we have heard over and over again, was a very nasty experience for all those who went through it and all those outside associated with the people who were detained, either part of their organizations or part of their families. I think it showed me really how horrible a government can be if they have so much power, that nobody can question them, that nobody can question their decisions, that they don't have to be accountable to anyone. I think that's really a very horrifying thing. Even though they have removed the Internal Security Act now, but they have introduced other laws which are very similar to the Internal Security Act. So Malaysia is still very much caught up in this kind of oppression. I also want to say that Operasi Lalang actually affected the work of Sahabat Wanita very badly. We have been more successful in reaching out to workers of Indian and some Chinese workers, but it was very difficult for us to reach out to Malay workers. And when Operasi Lalang took place, we were actually reaching out to Malay workers as well. And after I was detained, the special branch actually met with the Malay, at least the key Malay women workers in the electronics industry, and told them don't mix with the Sahabat Wanita because they are all communists, they are all anti-God, none of them believe in religion or God and all that. You better stay away from them. They will make use of you, and then you will, you will offend your God. So they actually heard this many times from special branch, from their imams in the factory itself, their religious teachers in the factory, because they have religious education in the factory, over and over again like this. So stay away from these people. And that has made it very difficult for us to actually go back to the Malay workers in electronics industry for a long time. It's only now that we have begun again to work with the Malay workers, and that is because now they have a union, they have an electronics union, and therefore they don't have all these kind of fears which workers have when they're not in a union. And so things have changed. Yeah, so I say that we need to work much harder to make sure that these kind of oppressive laws don't come back into the country. They still are here in the country, and we need to stop them, because I think to detain people like this is really very frightening. And I think now we are hearing even more frightening stories about what the government and what the special branch has done, perhaps participating in forced disappearances. So I think there are many very terrible things that are happening in this country, and we need to stop them. So that is what I need to say about Operasi Lalang. Nobody should go through this kind of detention.
Sahabat wanita 32 years.